Okay. And Ashley, I'm going to add a couple. And if you guys don't, you know, I hope you can feel this, but in this group here, I want you guys to feel free to make mistakes, just to learn, not be afraid to ask questions. And so I like to kind of go to each of you individually and ask you things, okay? And just know that, of course, we're all just here to support each other, okay? So I'm gonna just add a couple more. So I want major, relative, minor. Let's see, Eric, would you take number 1 and number 2? Okay, here's 3 and 4. Miki, would you take number 3 and 4? We have 4 sharps and we have 5 flats. And I'm gonna write 2 more for Heichung. There's number 5, Heichung, and I'm going to give you 1 more. I think green is not a good color here. It's kind of light, but we've got 5 sharps, and I'm going to give you a flat.
So what are we doing? 5
You're going to
sharp.
identify. We're going to do the major key and the relative minor key. Okay, so Eric, you've got. Oh my gosh, look at the glare too. Hang on. Let's see. There we go. Let's see if that helps. Okay, 1 and 2 for Eric, 3 and 4 for Miki, and 5 and 6 for Heichung. Okay, so, all right, Eric, what is the major key and the relative minor key of number 1?
It is D and the minor is E minor. Yeah, E minor.
B, right. Do you guys notice in Zoom, it's hard to sometimes tell with letters that rhyme with E, whether we're saying B or D or, yeah, but that's right. D major and B as in boy, minor.
B, yeah.
That's one of the minor scales we're going to be going over. All 3 types of minor scales with all the keys up to 2 sharps and 2 flats. Okay. Okay, and number 2, this is one of the memorized ones, right? What's number 2?
Number 2 is the relative key, the key of F, and the relative minor is E minor.
Right, so F major, we just need to memorize that one, and the relative minor is D minor. Good. Okay, all right, Miki, number 3.
Major key is E, and minor it's C sharp.
C sharp, good. Okay, and number 4, 5 sharps.
Number 4 is major D flat, and then minor B flat.
Yeah, D flat major, B flat minor. Good. You guys have any questions as to why the minor is B flat minor and not A sharp minor? 2 ways to answer that, right? One, we're obviously looking at a flat key, not a sharp key. And secondly, we skip exactly 1 letter name between the major and the relative minor. So D, skip C, and it's going to be B. We have to skip this 1 letter name when we're talking about a minor third. Okay, Heichung, let's do number 5.
B major and G sharp minor.
B major, G sharp minor. Good. Okay, and number 6, 3 flats.
E flat major and B minor.
And C minor. Good. Okay, guys, good. All right. This week in piano, we'll be playing through some of these minor scales as well. Miki, did you get the scores I emailed you yesterday?
I didn't get.
Okay, so I finally sent yesterday. So yeah, I sent it via email.
Like email. Okay, I will check.
Look, yeah, just so, yeah. So you can have those hopefully printed. Yeah, good, you guys. Okay, Any other questions on the material that we've just on our last assignment? Okay, I would like to move on. Did you guys have a chance to print our new assignment?
I have not yet.
Okay, not a big deal. I'm doing a lot of prep stuff for this one today. So we are getting into more detail. Whoa, that was close, sorry. More detail with intervals, okay?
Okay.
Now, with 101, you'll recall, we went over major and minor, seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. And let's just review that we've got two different groups of intervals, okay? We've got the ones that can be perfect. Which ones are the perfect ones? So is a second ever classified as a perfect interval? And I know this is major review, but Eric, it hasn't been too long for you, right? So which intervals, can you remember which intervals? So remember, some are major, minor, and some of them are perfect, augmented, diminished. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, when they're on the same note, on the same line. And yeah.
Oh, yep, unisons, right. Yep. I'm gonna upload an intervals handout. I don't think I've done that for you guys yet, with a review of this. Okay, so unisons can be perfect or augmented. Just remember, there's no such thing as a diminished unison. So when we're looking at unisons, either the notes are completely the same and it's perfect, or they're a half step apart, and it's augmented. So maybe logically speaking, we might think this is diminished. It's not diminished because there's no such thing as a diminished unison. This is an inverted augmented unison. And we're going to talk more about inverting intervals. But you only have two options with unisons. Well, you can actually have doubly augmented and a doubly augmented. That would be, and we do get into some of these this quarter. So this would be augmented. And if I were to double sharp my second note, right? So half step apart, if it's a unison, augmented.
Yes.
Two half steps apart, and it's a unison, they're on the same line or space, doubly augmented. So yeah, they get weird, but there is no diminished unison. That's what I want you to remember here, okay?
Okay.
So that's the unison. What are some other perfect intervals besides the unison? Other intervals that can be perfect. Eric?
P5. Oh, sorry.
Say again. Did you say 5?
P5, yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect
yeah.
5.
So fourths and fifths, and there's one other interval that can be perfect and would never ever be major or minor. Besides the unison, the fourth, and the fifth.
Is it an 8th octave?
It's an octave, otherwise known as an eighth. So this is our list of intervals that are going to be perfect, augmented, or diminished. Hang on. And you know, unisons can't be diminished, so it's perfect or, and get used to thinking of a plus as another way to say augmented, okay? Let me just, and you guys probably remember that too. And the little circle is another way to say diminished. So we see it both ways, okay? Okay, so back to here, these intervals can be perfect, augmented, or diminished, okay? With the exception of the unison, which can only be perfect and augmented. Okay, so that's a review, but I feel like from 101, this is the area sometimes that we need to review the most.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's talk about the other intervals that can be major or minor. And actually, they can also be augmented or diminished, but we have not talked about this in 101. So let's name the other intervals that can be major, minor. Okay, so if we go in order, we've got the second, the third, the sixth, and the seventh. Okay. These are our major, minor intervals. Now, what do we call one of these intervals that's a half step bigger than major? Which one of these terms would it be, guys? Augmented or diminished? A half step bigger than major. Which one?
Augmented.
Augmented. So a half step bigger than major is augmented. This is a new thing from 101 to 102. So then what do we call intervals that are a half step smaller than minor?
Diminished.
Diminished, right. These are some of the strangest intervals that we see, okay? And we're gonna look at these. Now, are you guys ready to move on?
Yeah.
You guys have all
Yes,
this
sir.
down? Okay. So as we approach these intervals, we have used one strategy so far. Well, I'll say two strategies. For the unison, we sort of use logic. Are the two notes a unison? Are they on the same line or space? And are they exactly the same note? That's a perfect unison. Are the two notes a unison on the same line or space, but a half step apart? That's an augmented unison. And I would say we also use logic, at least. I know Hei-chung and Miki, you had Steve as an instructor, and there are different, I think we all approach things a little bit differently. But in my 101 classes, I would often have students look at a keyboard picture and look at the octave as the perfect octave, of course, as being a C to a C. And let me go grab my packet, which is in the other room. Do you guys have a keyboard picture handy? Let's get it out. Okay, Eric, do you have my packet? So for the 101s, what I did starting last quarter is I put together a packet of all the 101 handouts and assignments. And there are a lot of handouts in here. And so Miki, Hei-chung, if you want, and I'm trying to remember to upload all of the pertinent ones for you. But if you think you want a packet, it's also got some pieces of staff paper. If you just send me your address, the print and mail center will actually mail one for free to you, okay? So I've got a keyboard picture here. Now, so when we look at an octave, I guess logically, a C to a C is a perfect octave. A D flat to a D flat is a perfect octave, right? And a half step smaller than perfect. So this would be a C. Oh, this is a tricky one. Would you guys write this one down, actually? C is your bottom note. And I would like, okay, C is your bottom note. I would like you to write a diminished octave above C. So let's take a minute to do that. A diminished octave above C. Kaya just got back to me. It's her birthday today, so I told her I'm recording. Okay. All right. So, does somebody want to tell me what you've got? A diminished octave above C.
I got this.
Yes, good. Now, if we're looking at the keyboard picture, and what's another name? And remember, the term for that would be enharmonic equivalent. What is the enharmonic equivalent for C flat? There's another name for C flat, at least one other name. What would that be?
B.
B, right. So if I'm just looking at the keyboard, I have to be careful here, right? Because enharmonically, if I play this on the piano, it's going to be right. But if I look at how I've written it, this is incorrect. What is this interval, guys?
7.
Yeah, and because this is the 7th note of the C major scale, what kind of a 7th is it? All the major scale intervals are either perfect, if we're talking about the 4th and the 5th. Yes, major.
Majors.
It's a major
7.
7th. So remember in 101, we use our major scales to help us see what the perfect interval is if it's a 4th and a 5th, and what the major interval is if it's a 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 7th, and then we compare. So this is really important that we first count the number. And I feel like it's those of us who have had some music that already play the piano that will get confused by the fact that we have to do the number first without any consideration of sharps or flats. Because sometimes the keyboard picture, as helpful as it is, sometimes it can be misleading, right? Okay, now that said, back to my original statement that we have used logic up to this point to figure out intervals, and we've also used our major scale to compare. Let's practice a couple of using our major scale to compare. And those of you that play the piano, or in your case, Tae-Chung, the cello, you can probably think your major scales in your head. If not, it's helpful to have them written out. I don't know if you still have your 101 major scale assignment with accidentals. I think it's really helpful to have. So let's just practice how we did that, just to review, okay? Remembering that all of the intervals within the major scale, when compared to the lowest note, are either perfect in the case of a 4th or a 5th or an octave, or major in the case of a 2nd, 3rd, 6th, or 7th. I would like you to do, let's do a couple here. Oh, this is a sharp, if you can see it. Okay. So how are we going to approach this with our major scales? Who can tell me? Which major scale are we looking at to compare here? Or which major scale are we thinking about? Eric? Do you remember? Do you want me to just review? Yes, okay. All right, whatever the lowest note of our interval, we are thinking this major scale, okay? So I'm just gonna write it really quick. Here. Okay, what does this tell us? Well, remember that the distance between the first and the second note is a major second. The distance between the first note and the third note is a, say it, major
A major third.
third, major third. The distance between the first note and the fourth note is a
Major fourth.
perfect
Perfect
fourth.
fourth.
Perfect fourth. The distance between the first and the fifth note is a perfect fifth. The distance between the first and the sixth note is a
major sixth.
Major sixth. And this distance from the first note to the seventh note is a
major seventh.
Major seventh. And here we have a perfect octave. Okay, now, how does that help us when we're looking at the first one right here? Who can tell me?
C sharp.
Yeah, go ahead, Miki.
It's major 7
Because that note matches the seventh note of the scale. Therefore, that is a major seventh. You guys with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before we move on from that, I want you to write a D right here. And I want you to write a minor seventh above D, a minor seventh above D. Remembering that minor is a half step smaller than major. Okay, so I think it's sometimes a good idea to start with major, just so we can really see it. Okay, so we know this is a major seventh, right? And we know that for this to be a minor seventh, it has to be smaller. So what am I going to do to my top note to make it a half step smaller? I'm going to lower it. Yes, I have to lower my note to make it a minor interval. And to lower a sharp note, I erase the sharp. And remember, I can never, ever change the fact that this is a C, because then I no longer have a seventh, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a minor. So we have major 7 here. We have a minor 7th here. Now I would like you to write a diminished 7th above D. And remember, we talked about the fact that diminished is a half step smaller than minor. So think about what you have to do here.
You put the flat sign.
Yes, good. So I have to further lower my minor 7th a half step by flatting that note. That is a diminished 7th. And guys, if we ever wanted to write a doubly diminished 7th, just so you know, think about how you have to how you would lower this note one more half step. Who can tell me? Hey, Chung, how would this turn into a doubly diminished 7th? What would I do to this note?
One more flat.
One more flat. I would have to double flat it. Okay. We're not going to be doing double flat, double sharps directly with assignments, but we will come across them. It's just part of studying music theory. Okay. Let's do the second one now.
So, you said augmented is half.
Oh, we didn't do augmented. Thank you. Okay. Half step bigger than major.
Yeah.
So for augmented, let's write an augmented 7th above D, keeping in mind what our major 7th looks like and thinking about what we have to do to that C to augment the interval.
You put a sharp sign on.
Say again?
You put the sharp on the note?
Well, we already have a sharp for major, right? This is our major 7th. So what am I going to do to this to make it even a half step bigger?
Double sharp.
Double sharp it, right. And remember a double sharp, just write an X, in print it's just kind of a fancy X, but that's our double sharp. And this we will see quite a bit in 102 is double sharps and double flats. So that's our augmented seventh. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one then. This one right here, D to a B flat. Think about how your major scale is going to help you figure that out. Okay, I'll give you a minute to think about it. I would like to do this one. Who would like to tell me what this interval is?
Minor 6.
Minor 6, good. So we know it's a sixth. So we go to our D major scale, which is the scale of the lowest note, count up 6 notes, and we see that there's a B is the 6th note of the scale, which tells us this is what type of interval from D to B? Major, right? And that's just our major scale. We compare and we go, oh, well, it's not major. The flat means it's a half step smaller than major, and we call a half step smaller than major minor, okay? So we have a minor 6th. Now, I want you to take a minute to write, let's do a diminished 6th above D, and let's do an augmented 6th above D, okay? I'll give you a minute to do that.
For the diminished 6, is it a I think a doubly diminished?
A double flat?
Double, yeah, double flat. Yeah.
A double flat, good. Okay, there's the diminished. How about the augmented? Miki or Hei-chang?
C.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because if you're looking at the keyboard, you'd go, yep, but when I write a C, what have I changed this interval from a 6th to a, what's my number right now?
7?
Should we count?
Wait.
A 7th, we can't change the fact that it's a B. So how is the C that you're looking at on your keyboard picture? Because you're right, you do have to raise it a half step higher than B. What are we going to call your B?
B sharp.
Yes. So this is what we have to be so careful with, especially you guys that are all musical already, okay? And familiar with the keyboard. So that's why I think it's important to do the number first before you start thinking too hard about anything else, right? Okay, now, I think the strangest ones probably when we're talking about augmented diminished are probably the 2nds and the 7ths and maybe the 3rds. So I'm going to give you guys a little assignment here to do. Okay. So in 101, we always write our interval above the note we're given, because that's easiest. We can use our major scale that way. But in real life music theory, sometimes we're writing an interval below the note, the given note. So we have several different strategies we can use doing that. One of them is to just use the logic of knowing that an augmented interval is a half step bigger than major, right? Or a half step bigger than perfect. A diminished interval is a half step smaller than minor, or a half step smaller than perfect. And then we can use our keyboard. So I want you guys to just now, for these examples, I want you to write the interval below the note I give you, and I'm going to give you 4 different kinds of seconds to write. We're going to start with a major second, go to a minor second, a diminished second, and an augmented second. And I want you to start with a B. Now, here is a logic thing I want you to remember. While you're looking at these, I'm going to write this down. Okay, now, can you take a look at this? And I think with seconds, it's probably when you're writing them below the note, the given note, it's easiest to think logically with the keyboard. Okay.
What do you mean the whole step and half step?
Okay, so when we look at a keyboard picture, oh my gosh, I have a keyboard right here. Okay, when we look at a whole, remember a whole step is skipping 1 key. So a whole step above C means I skip this half step, and this is the distance of a whole step. We always skip 1 key in the middle, whole step. So what's a whole step above E, Hey Chong? If I skip 1 key and I go to here, it would be an F sharp. Yeah, but go ahead and take a look at it. E to an F sharp, right? A half step would be then from here to the next key. That's a half step from here to here, or from here to here, or from here to here. So when we're thinking of seconds, it's a quick way to do it, to look at the keyboard and see if the distance between the 2 notes is a whole step distance, then we know it's a major second. If the 2 notes are indeed a second apart, a minor second is a half step. And then you can probably imagine how a diminished second is so strange. But now I want you to work on writing your second a half step below this note and really think about it. It's kind of a little bit mind bending, especially when we get to the diminished in this case. So let's see. Let's have Eric, why don't you do the major second? Miki, you do the minor second. Hey Chung, you do the diminished second. And then I guess we're back to Eric doing the augmented. So Eric, you're gonna do, I started with you, right? You're gonna do major second, augmented second. Miki, your minor second. Hey Chung, you're doing diminished second. And we're writing the interval below the given note. But I want all of you to do all four. It's important. So make sure you're doing all four, okay? You guys still working? Okay, let's go ahead and start with the major second. Eric, what do you think about a whole step, well, a major second below B?
It would be a C sharp.
Oh, we have to, it would if you were writing the interval above, but I want you to write the interval below that note.
Okay. So it's an A.
An A, right. So, and if we look on the keyboard, if we go from a B down a whole step, we have an A. Okay, so that's correct. Okay, Miki, the minor second below B.
A flat.
So let's look at that on here. If we go from a B to an A, we know that this, okay, sorry, just a sec. Okay, a B to an A is a whole step, correct? Oh, that's weird when it's reversed. Does that not look like a B and an A to you? It
Yeah.
looks like an F to a G, doesn't it? When it's weird. Okay. It's the mirrored view. Okay, so we have a whole step from A to B. Let me see if I can do it according to what you're looking at. Okay, we have a whole step from A to B, so we know that's major. Now, if we move this note down to A flat, do you see how I have just made this interval a half step bigger than major? And what type of interval is a half step bigger than major?
Augmented.
Augmented. So in A, if you don't mind me us doing your other one you were going to do, Eric, a B to an A flat is a half step bigger than major, so that is an augmented second. So you've got to move the other direction. Minor is a half step smaller than major, so what you need to do is think about how you can raise this note a half step so the notes are a half step closer together. So what do you think? A minor second below B. So we can start, I think I would start with a major second in this case and go, okay, this is a major second. Now for these two notes to be closer together when I'm below the note, that's the difference here, Miki. When we're thinking above the note, yes, we would lower that. We would lower that note a half step to make these two notes closer together. But when we're talking about two notes below, like this, we have to raise this note to bring it closer to this note. Let's look at it here.
So it's sharp.
Yes, it's an A sharp. That's right. And then we can look and go, okay, a B to an A sharp is a half step. And that therefore is a minor second. Okay. So, hey Chung, you've got the weirdest one of all, which is the diminished second. What do you think here? We have to bring it a half step closer to this note.
A double sharp.
Yeah, excellent. Now, do you guys see why that is such a weird one? So what we have to do if we're comparing to minor, we have to raise this note one more time to bring it even a half step closer to our starting note, because diminished is a half step smaller than minor, and we were already a half step difference, right? So if we start with minor and go, okay, I have to raise this one more time, we end up double sharpening it. Now let's find what those look like here. Here's our B, right? Here's our B. Does this look correct to you guys from my perspective? Is this a B?
It looks like
Okay.
F. Yes.
Okay. It looks like what?
F.
Oh, it does. Well, then I'll just do it. That's weird. So from my perspective, okay, then this to me on my keyboard, when I'm looking directly down at it, this is a B. Does that look correct to you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so here's our major second. Here's our minor second. Here, okay, this is an A. This is an A sharp. Here is an A double sharp. A double sharp and B are enharmonic equivalents. In other words, two different names for the same key, and that is why the diminished second is so strange. And as a composer or arranger, you want to really be careful about giving that interval to the singer, because you can imagine that would just be hard to process, the singing of a diminished second. Does that make sense? Okay. So file that away, and when you're doing the section, it's the last section, section C on your assignment. When you come to the seconds, this is the easiest way, believe it or not, to do it. This is the easiest strategy to use when you're writing the interval below and you're supposed to write a second, okay?
Okay.
All right, let's see. We did a little bit with, you know what, let's do the same thing with the third. So do you remember when we're talking about a minor third, we always have to think of minor third when you are going from a major key to a relative minor, correct? And when you're counting down a minor third, how many half steps in a minor third? Do you guys remember? 3 half steps in a minor third, 4 half steps in a major third. And this should bring you back to when you're figuring out triads, right?
Yeah.
All triads consist of different combinations of major thirds and minor thirds. So, and I'll just review how we count those, even though I know you guys know, but we might just want to review what we call them, okay? This is the important information when you're thinking about looking at thirds in terms of half steps, whole steps, and this is a very good strategy to use in section C when you are writing a third below a note.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
So let's practice a couple of those. Did you guys get this? Do you want me to, let me just wait another minute.
What's the difference, major 3 and minor 3?
So minor third, remember minor is always a half step smaller than major in any context. So let's look. And let's count down, because this is what we're doing in this particular exercise. Okay, so looking at my keyboard picture here is C. So you guys take a minute and count down a major third. So that means you're going to count down 4 half steps. Don't count your starting note when we're counting half steps. Go ahead and take a minute. And also think about what you're going to call that key you land on. It needs to be a third. And I think I'm going to write it here as well. I'll write it in the base class. We are on C currently, and we want to write a major third below that. And we also want to write a minor third below. Okay. Okay, so ready? I'm going to count down 4 half steps, not counting my starting note. 1 is B, 2 is B flat, 3 is A, 4 is this key. What am I going to call this key?
A flat.
Right, look, it's an A flat. This is a major third because it's 4 half steps below. What if I call this key a G sharp? Because that's another name for it, right? Is that still a third? From
No.
Peter?
No.
No, it's now a fourth. It's actually a diminished fourth. A diminished fourth and a major third are the same distance. They're both half step. They're both 4 half steps. But one is clearly a third and one is clearly a fourth. Okay, so if this is a major third, hey Chung, let's have you do this one. Would you tell me what interval is a minor third below C? A minor third below C. 3 half steps.
3 half step.
Not counting C.
A.
A, that's right. Okay.
Oh, I saw you write down the both 4 half steps. So
For major, did I write that? Yeah. Oh my gosh, no wonder you asked what the difference is. You guys, I am never offended if you want to say, it looks like you've made a mistake here, guys. I am never offended, okay? Okay, so I'm sorry about that. This is important. 3 half steps is a minor third, 4 half steps is a major third, okay? So with that in mind, I'm going to give you another assignment to do here. And oh my gosh, we need more time for this assignment because there's, well, you know what? I think that's all we have time to do with the major thirds. But, and we already did an example of a seventh. And I need to cover a couple other things on this assignment, okay? Because I want to have time for ear training. So important. So section B on your assignment. So remember I said there are different strategies to writing intervals below, because it's one of the more difficult things we do in music theory. And one of the strategies is if you don't want to deal with that interval because it's just too challenging, let's say you're writing an augmented sixth below a note, you can actually you can write the inverted interval and then put that note an octave below. So we need to spend some time on this. So when I invert, if I'm going to invert this eraser, I just simply turn it upside down, right? So if I'm going to invert an interval, let's invert a third. I have a third here. If I'm going to invert it, and I'm just simply, and let me just put a clef sign up here. I'm just simply going to put the bottom note on the top. Okay. So do you guys see that this is the inversion of this? Here I have an F to an A. Here I have an A, but I'm putting the F on the top. Okay. What is the number of this interval? Number from here? 3. What is the number of this interval?
6.
6.
6. 3 plus 6 equals
9.
9. Okay. Let's do another one. Okay. I have an F to a C. I'm going to invert this interval. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put the bottom note on the top. And this is now inverted. So what's my number here?
5.
5. And what's my number here?
4.
4.
4. 4 plus 5 equals
9.
9. Okay. What's my interval here?
2.
2. Now I'm going to put my bottom note on the top. So I have a D to a C because I'm in the bass clef. I'm going to put the C on top of D. What's my interval now?
7.
7. 2 plus 7 equals
9.
9. This is called the rule of nines. When you invert an interval, the two intervals are going to equal 9. Okay, so Eric, what does a fifth invert to?
9.
9 is the total. Okay, we know the two notes are going to add up. So what does a fifth invert to? Ask you 5 plus what equals 9? Ask yourself.
Oh, 4.
Yeah. So when I say what does a fifth invert to, you say
4.
a fourth.
Are
Good.
you subtract the number being inverted by 9?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey,
Cool.
Chong, what does a seventh invert to?
7th.
What does a seventh invert to? 7.
3 plus
7 plus what equals 9?
2.
2. A seventh inverts to a second. Miki, what does a sixth invert to? 6.
3.
3. You guys got this part? Should we do a couple more? No, we are going to do a couple more, but I want to tell you one other thing. So when we're talking about major, minor, perfect, augmented, diminished, we are talking about the quality of the interval, okay? So how do the qualities invert? Augmented inverts to diminished. I'm writing this down too. Perfect inverts to perfect. Major inverts to minor, and of course all the reverses. So look, okay, and I should actually do the arrow both ways. Okay, so if you have a minor third, it's going to invert to a major sixth. If you have a perfect octave, which is kind of a weird one. We're probably not actually going to use this, but technically a perfect octave inverts to a perfect unison, right? And you guys, what does an augmented fourth invert to?
5. Diminished.
Diminished fifth. Can we practice this a little bit? Nikki, what does a major sixth invert to?
Minor 3.
Minor 3. You guys all see that? We're doing the rule of nines, plus we're thinking the qualities and how they invert. Eric, what does a perfect fifth invert to?
A perfect fourth.
Hey, Chung, what does a minor seventh invert to?
Major second.
You guys got it?
Yeah.
Okay. How can this help us when we're doing this bottom section of this assignment? Okay, what do we call this rule that we were just talking about? The rule of nines, the number 9, the rule of nines, okay? Rule of nines. And that's basically section B. You're practicing what we were just practicing. What does a minor third become, etc. Okay, in section C, let's do like 3 of these, okay? And these are kind of like math problems that you sometimes just have to work out and sit with them for a while, okay? And when you guys are working on this assignment, you can upload that assignment as many times as you want and say, hey, can you take a look at these, when you're in the process? And then send me a message so I know that you've done it, and I'll just give you input throughout. Okay. Number 1, and remember all of these, we're writing the interval below. If we were writing the interval above, I would just think, okay, it's the F major scale. I'm going to write the 7th note of the F major scale, and that's going to be a major 7th, right? So what does a major 7th invert to?
Minor second.
A minor second. Now, remember what I told you about a minor second in terms of half steps, whole steps? What does a minor second look like on the keyboard? A minor second. Just tell me. I wrote a major second is a whole step, and a minor second is a
half step.
half step. So let's just look at the keyboard. And if we're writing, okay, if we're right, and so we're going to write the inversion of this. So think about this. If I'm writing the major seventh below, I'm going to write the minor second above. Above is always easier than below. Okay, so let's do that first. What is a minor second above F? Look at your keyboard. A minor second above F. Half step above F, and it has to be a second.
F flat, F sharp.
If it's F sharp, is this a second?
G flat.
G flat. What interval do I have right now? An F to an F sharp. What is that? Think
Unison?
about the rules about unisons. What kind of a unison? Miki, what kind of a unison is this? What's a half step bigger than perfect? Do you remember?
What's the question?
What is this interval? And this is basically not a perfect unison, because an F to an F would be perfect. If it's a half step bigger than or smaller than a perfect unison, what's the word for a half step bigger than perfect, guys?
Augmented.
Augmented. Half step bigger than perfect is augmented. Half step bigger than major is augmented. Half step bigger than perfect. So this is an augmented unison, and I'm glad you said this, Eric, because you can see how important it is that you remember the number of the interval first. So how about before we even look at the keyboard, let's say if I'm writing the inverted interval, right? So if I'm writing a minor second above F, I know it's going to have to be some sort of G, because an F to a G is a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's look at F. And a half step above that, and it has to be a G. Eric, what is this called?
G flat.
G flat. So I have now written my minor second. Now I know that a minor second inverts to a major seventh, so all I have to do is take my G flat and write it down an octave, and I know that I will have a major seventh, because a major seventh inverts to a minor second. This is my major seventh.
So that is when we like write the note below.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Good. Now, another way I want to have you look at seventh here. If you want to compare the seventh to an octave, take a look. An F to an F is a perfect octave, right? A half step smaller than perfect is a major seventh. A whole step smaller than perfect is a minor seventh. Okay, so you can also look at the octave and compare. Let me write that one down. Okay. So you can also compare the seventh to the octave. I was trying to skip this, but I just really feel like I need to do one exercise with you here to really cement that with the octave. So we are in the base class. I'm going to give you a starting note of an F, and I want you to write a major seventh below F, a minor seventh below, a diminished seventh below, and an augmented seventh below F. Let's just take a minute to do this. Now, I would like you to compare the major seventh to the octave and start with F to F as the octave. And then, right, F to F is your octave. And since we're writing it below, oh, that's the one we just did in your assignment. I'm going to move that note to A. I apologize. So if we're starting with A to A, and a half step smaller than A brings it in a half step, right? Then this is how you're going to start. And since it's a seventh, you could start with just making sure that you're thinking the right note, knowing that a seventh of below A will always be some sort of B, and start there. And then compare your major seventh, because a major seventh is a half step smaller than an octave. Then, and a minor seventh is a whole step smaller than an octave, is what I meant to write. So we can just compare to the octave. So let's do that in this instance, okay? So if we're starting with, let's do the first one. If we're starting with an A, we're going below to an A. And a half step smaller than an octave is bringing this note in a half step. What kind of a B is this note I'm pointing to?
B flat.
B flat. So we know that the major seventh is an A to a B flat because that distance is a half step smaller than an octave. Eric, do you want to figure out minor? Oh, hey Chung, I hate to give you diminished again though. Okay, let's see. Eric, go ahead and do minor. Let's have you do augmented, hey Chung. And Miki, would you do the diminished seventh?
Okay.
Think about what you have to do to your B flat to bring it in a half step, okay? And go ahead and speak up when you've figured yours out. I need to plug in my computer here, one sec. Go ahead and speak up when you're ready.
I think I'm ready.
Which one are you doing, Nikki?
Diminished.
Diminished. Okay. So, okay. Actually, Eric, do you have minor figured out yet?
I think so.
Okay, what would a minor seventh be below B flat? I mean, below A.
A B?
A B, there it is. And if we're looking at a whole step smaller than an octave, we have an A to an A. An A to a B flat is major. An A to a B is minor. And Miki, what An A to what is diminished?
G sharp.
B sharp, that's right. We just have to move this in a half step. These keep getting smaller, right? Up, you know, raise this note a half step for minor, raise this note a half step for diminished. Now let's go back to major, which is the B flat. Now we have to go bigger. So hey, Chung, what do you think?
B sharp.
That's making it smaller. B sharp is going to be our diminished seventh. Oh, I'm having you do augmented seventh. So if we start with major, which is A to B flat, we have to actually go, remember augmented is a half step bigger than major. So look, I have to lower my B flat a half step to get augmented, but it still has to be a seventh. So I'm actually lowering this note another half step.
A.
A is the enharmonic answer, but an A to an A is a perfect octave. So what I'm getting at here, the perfect octave and the augmented seventh are the exact same number of half steps apart, but one is a seventh, one is an octave, right? So this perfect octave on the keyboard looks exactly the same as our augmented seventh, but this B has to be, or the A has to be called a B. So what's another name for this B so that it looks like an A?
B double flat.
Right, B double flat. And again, that's such a weird interval, right? We look at, as a singer, any of you guys also sing? As a singer, this interval would really be frowned upon to be written for a singer to sing this interval because it's so counterintuitive, I guess. Okay. Now, I want to talk through. I just want to talk through a couple of these. Look at section C. We're in the treble class. We're back to your assignment. Section C, number 2. You are writing a perfect fourth below this note. Okay. How could you, what are some different ways you could approach this? Can somebody talk me through using the rule of nines and the inverting? If you wanted to write the interval above, you would write, what interval does the perfect fourth invert to?
Perfect fifth.
So if you want to think the E major scale, you can write the fifth note of the E major scale because you know that would be a perfect fifth, and take the note you've written and write it an octave below, knowing that a perfect fifth inverts to a perfect fourth. You can approach it that way if you wish. Okay. And I want to talk through one more. I think that the next one, number 3, which is a minor sixth. What does a minor sixth invert to? Who wants to tell me? Miki, what does a minor sixth invert to? What is minor invert to?
Minor is a minor.
It's a minor sixth. So what
Okay,
does a minor
so
sixth invert to?
It will be major 3.
Yeah, now that would be pretty easy to do, right? Because what major scale could I think of here and just write the third note of that major scale? What's the, what note is this?
D.
A D. I could look at the D major scale, write the third note because I know that the third note of all major scales, that distance between the starting note and the third note is always a major third. So if I write the third note of the D major scale, and then I take that note and write it exactly an octave below, I know that a major third inverts to a minor sixth. Okay. Now for number 4, which is an augmented second below C sharp, you could just simply count half steps, right? Be careful because you know what is a second below C, guys? What letter name is a second below C?
A.
That's a third. A second would be the next letter name, but you have to think your alphabet backwards, right?
It's B.
A B. So you might even want to do that with all of these because some of them are so strange. So you remember, oh, that's right, I have to call the note a B, right? You could start with what you know about the major second, start with what you know. What's the whole step below C sharp? Can we look at our keyboard picture and do this one together? If we were writing a major second below C sharp, we would move down a whole step on the keyboard. What's the whole step below C sharp on the keyboard?
B.
B. So right now, what kind of an interval do I have? A C sharp to a B is a whole step is also a major second, correct? A whole step distance is also a major second, or all major seconds are whole steps. But remember, augmented means a half step bigger than that. So if I'm on C sharp and B, that means I have to lower my note a half step by moving here. So what am I going to call this note now for it to be augmented?
B flat.
B flat. Yes. The augmented second and the minor third are both 3 half steps distances, right? But a C to a B is a second. And I just want to underline that again. I think it's a great idea to write the number first and then figure out what kind of flats or sharps or double flats you need to use, okay? So this isn't an assignment that you're probably going to sit down and do in one day. You're probably going to just work at it for a while. This is the only assignment I gave you this week. And it's one of a lot of students at the end of the quarter will say, well, that was the hardest assignment we did all quarter. So I'm happy to take a look at it. Now, let's just look at this the first section. Okay, you can certainly, I came unplugged again. You can I'm sorry, one sec. You can certainly pick out all the ones that look like assignment 4 that you did. Remember assignment 4, all the intervals and key signatures you did with 101. And the ones that look easy. Anytime your bottom note is a major scale, right? Starting note, that's an easy one to figure out. But let's look at number 6, you guys. Number 6. Eric, you're not looking at your assignment yet, right?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Then I want to show you one more thing here.
Okay.
So this is section A, number 6. We're in the base class. Okay, so our bottom note is a B sharp. What's another name for B sharp, guys?
C.
Yeah. So who wants to deal with a B sharp as our bottom note? Not I. So why don't we get rid of that sharp by lowering both of our notes a half step? It's going to be a more palatable interval. So how do I lower my bottom note a half step? By getting rid of the sharp, right?
Yes.
But that means I also have to lower this note a half step. How low do I lower a D a half step?
To a D flat.
To a D flat. And this is just easier to think about. So if you don't like your bottom note, another one would be number 12, where F flat is your bottom note. Just lower both notes a half step, and then your interval is going to be the same if you lower both of them, right? This is still a weird one. These two notes are only a half step apart, but it's a third. So I'll leave you guys to think about that one. But there are several in section A where you're going to want to lower or even raise a note a half step. For number 12, when F flat is your starting note, if you raise both notes a half step, you get rid of the flat on the bottom, and then you add a flat on the top. Okay. So I definitely touched on, I think, everything, but we haven't spent a ton of time on it. I expect you guys to just work your way through this and take your time. And if you're still working on the due date, just as long as you're working, that's okay. You know, this is going to overlap with our next assignment. From here on out, most weeks we're doing 2 assignments a week. Okay. Okay. So we're going to do a little bit of ear training. And this, I think this is our most time-consuming assignment today, what I just presented. So normally I can keep this class time to just an hour. So I've got some intervals I'm going to send you a link to that you can be practicing. So you can also go to Teoria and start practicing. But then I have another site that I've sort of customized the intervals for you to practice. Okay.
Okay.
So let's just do a little bit of this. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. I want to do some triads today. So when you're you guys pretty comfortable with your voice? I don't mean in front of the rest of us, but if you can think of this and this and this and sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, because remember a triad is do, mi, so. And if these three notes all fit in the major scale, then what type of a triad do you have? A major triad.
Major triad.
Yeah, if you take the first note, the third note, and the fifth note of any major scale, this is a major triad. Okay? Listen to some major triads. Okay. Now for minor, this definitely has a different, so these are called qualities. Again, we're talking about the qualities of the 4 different types of intervals. Major, minor, augmented, diminished are the qualities. We definitely have a sad, maybe more tragic sound with the minor triad. And if we take a minor scale, the first 5 notes of every minor scale are exactly the same, right? It's the 6th and the 7th that change sometimes with the melodic and with the harmonic minor, correct? But the first, third, and fifth notes of a minor triad make up, I'm sorry, of a major scale make up a minor triad. Now diminished, so remember when we're writing diminished triads that the distances are equal. And the distance between the root and the third, a minor third, this is a minor third, 3 half steps. And between the third and the fifth, this is also a minor third or 3 half steps. Okay. Now listen to the augmented triad. These distances are also equal. We have a major third from the bottom note to the middle note. What's our terminology? And I was just using it, but when we're talking about a triad, we call the bottom note the what?
Root.
Anybody? The root. We call the middle note the
A note.
the third.
Third.
The third, and because we're counting up 3 notes from the root, so it's called the third. And we call the top note the fifth because we're counting up 5 notes from the root to get there. So the distance between the root and the third in an augmented triad is a major third, 4 half steps. And the distance between the third and the fifth is a major third. Okay, so let's review this. This goes back to assignment 8, in which we will be doing, getting all into triads even more this quarter than we did with Music 101. So again, the distance, what types of thirds make up an augmented triad? On the bottom, we have a
Major third.
Major third. And between the third and the fifth, we have a
Major third.
Major third. Major third, major third. That's an augmented triad. What type of triad has a minor third on the bottom and a minor third on the top?
Diminished.
Diminished. And then what type of triad has, this is a handout from 101 also. What type of a triad has a major third between the root and the third, and a minor third between the third and the fifth? That
Major.
would be a major triad.
Major.
And the minor triad has a minor third on the bottom and
Major
a major third on top. So that's just a little review for when we get into our triad assignment soon. So let's just do just a little bit of listening. We can kind of do these together. So let's take this one. Listen. And when I play it together, is it major, minor, augmented, or diminished? Anybody want to venture a guess?
Minor.
Minor. Compare this to major, which is brighter, more optimistic, happy, right? Okay, let's do another one.
Sounds like augmented.
Yeah, so here's something that you can listen for. Listen to the top note. To me, this wants to move down. Hear that?
It's major.
Yes, if I move my top note down, it's a major triad. Yeah, we see augmented. So if we take the whole tone scale, all those steps, and we take the first, third, and fifth notes of the whole tone scale, we have an augmented triad. Augmented triad, just like the whole tone scale, is used in, well, like John Williams uses it a lot. Like he did the music for E.T., you know, the extraterrestrial, Star Wars. The whole tone scale makes us think of maybe magic or space or, you know, Twilight Zone. And so when we have the augmented triad, which is formed from the whole tone scale, it's that same kind of sound. And so if you can mentally hear the top note moving down a half step, which brings us to major, this might be a way to help you hear it. Okay, let's do another one. I'm gonna roll then. If we could start here. Do, re, mi, fa, go, mi. Listen to my middle note. Do, re, mi, fa, sol is the first 5 notes of our major scale, right? And here's your triad. Does the middle note fit in the major scale? Here's the major scale. Here's my triad. Okay.
It's minor.
This is minor. Here's major. Here's minor. Let's listen to this one.
Augmented.
Diminished.
Diminished. So, and I think a lot of us will hear the augmented or diminished. We can hear that it's not a triad within the major and the minor scale, but we're not sure which one. So the diminished, some people call this a little bundle of stress. The diminished triad is tension. And if I add a 7 to it, it's even more, tension. So these notes are close together. They're minor third apart. If I raise my top note a half step, I get a minor triad. And I go back down. You guys ever watch the X-Files? It's an old, yeah. Okay, well, it uses the diminished triad in the theme. So these 4 triads, I want you to really start listening to this week: major, minor, augmented, diminished. And when we're doing this together, and when we do we'll do an ear training final eventually, I always roll the notes separately rather than just play, so you can kind of practicing it, okay? So practicing your intervals this week, you can go on Theoria. I still, I guess, want you to focus on all the major scale intervals, major, seconds, thirds, sixths and sevenths, and perfect fourths, fifths, and octaves, and practice the 4 types of triads, okay? You guys have any questions?
I don't. Everything makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay, good, great. Thanks for being on camera today. Do it whenever you can, and if you just have a day that you can't do it, I'll understand. Okay, but this is ideal for me when we can all work together this way. Okay. All right, Miki, I'll see you shortly.
Okay.
Hey Chong, I'll be getting back to you in the next day or so, and hopefully you can get a lesson in this week. And Eric, we're on for Friday afternoon, and I'll
Yes.
message you the exact time. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Great, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
Bye.